Everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we are diving straight into subtopic 2.4 of my IBESS syllabus. Today we are going to focus on climate and biomes, and if you need to refer to my previous slide decks, you can find the link in the description below. So in this subtopic we are going to understand what exactly biome is, what are different types of biomes, and what are the different factors which influences the distribution of these biomes. Okay, we are also going to understand the how the circulation and distribution exactly works, what are the concepts behind it, and what are the problem or what are the things which we will be facing if there is the disruption if happens. Okay, so there we are going to come up with a new terminologies like biome shifts. So let's get started. So let's understand first what is the difference between climate and weather. So generally we sometimes not being so mindful and we just use weather and climate word anytime, right? But there is the difference between these two word. When we talk about climate, it is relatively a longer period of time. When we say weather, it describes the condition in the atmosphere over a short period of time. So when I say US climate, or when I particularly say east coast of US climate or west coast of US climate, is different than the like it is what is happening in the Asian countries. Okay, so different countries, different states, different continents have different kind of an climate. So when I talk about climate, it's something which is a condition which is going to remain in that same temperature or precipitation for a longer period of time. When we say weather, it describes the condition in the atmosphere over a short period of time. So weather, minutes to days, it gets changed. Like when I say today's weather is hot or tomorrow weather is cold, likewise we can say, but that same thing we cannot use it for climate. Climate generally it's a long term average. Whether it is local, specific place and time is there, and climate is regional or global patterns. Weather, temperature, rain, wind, humidity, pressure changes at any time and at any moment. The same thing is not happening with the climate. It is, there is this average temperature range which remains as it is, it doesn't change frequently. So, weather changes rapidly, climate stays over a decade. Whether it rained in London today, while we say about climate, London has a temperature, maritime climate with a mild winter. So that's the difference between the climate and weather. Now, coming to the subtopic title biome, it's very important. Let's understand the definition. I have seen in one of the past paper they have asked in paper 1 case study where they have asked the definition of biome. So you need to remember the definition. So biome is a group of comparable ecosystem that have developed in a similar or climatic conditions wherever they occur. Okay, so what are the factors? So basically it's a group of an ecosystem, okay, which shares similar climatic condition wherever they occur. Okay, so now what are the factors, like where on what factors does it depend? So it first depends upon the insolation. Now insolation means it's a sunlight. Okay, what is the temperature in that condition, how much precipitation is happening, and what its biome type. Okay, so on that factors does the biome depend. So when we say that this biome is different from the another biome, then what are the factors which generally different? So it's an insolation, temperature and precipitation. So these are the three main variables we can say which differs between the biomes, and these are the factors which responsible for the distribution of biodiversity. Now when you compare two biomes, they differ a lot in terms of biodiversity, in terms of the kind of growing season, or the kind of, what kind of soil moisture or what kind of water availability is there. So all these factors plays very important role. Okay, like when you talk about insolation, we know that highest insolation found near the equator. So that is something which supports dense and biodiverse forest, and that's why you will see that there is large biodiversity in the area where there is a high insolation. And if there are low insolation at, so like we know that at poles there is this low insolation, so that will limit the vegetation growth. Similarly, temperature also affects metabolic rate, growing season length, and which organism survives. Like tropical biome consistently warmer year round, while polar biome is extremely cold with short growing season. Then we have precipitation, which also determines the soil moisture and water availability. Like in desert, we have less precipitation, and that's why we have sparse vegetation. While in tropical rainforest, we have a very greater rainfall, and that's why it supports lush growth. So these are the different biomes which you need to study. These are the very common map, or you can say graph, which is something you will probably see in the exams also, because the same graph or similar type of graph they will use in your exam. And then they will ask you to identify the mean annual temperature of temperate forest, or mean annual temperature of savanna, or mean annual precipitation of tropical rainforest. So you should be able to interpret the averages of different biomes from this map. Okay, so just observe the x-axis, y-axis, and see where does it align. And like you can see in tropical rainforest, there is this higher side rainfall is there, and the temperature, the mean annual average temperature is also higher, right? So these are the different biomes which you need to study. Okay, and this type of climate graphs is known as climatographs. Okay, where you see monthly temperature and precipitation for a location. And so these are the temperature which controls the metabolic rate and growing season length. And biomes classified along a gradient from cold polar to warm tropical. Rainfall determines soil moisture and vegetation type. And so different latitudes and different elevation, you'll see different temperature. And that's how the, so there is this exam tip that they may ask you to create or interpret a climate graph, so you should be able to do that. So major biomes which you need to study is this forest. In forest there are two types, tropical rainforest and temperate forest. Then we have grasslands, where again we have savanna, temperate grasslands. Desert we have two types, hot and cold. And there is this one which where generally they don't ask questions about coastal, but yeah, they ask questions about marine, where you have to write about coral reefs and estuaries and deep oceans. Then we have freshwater, in that we have lakes, rivers, and wetlands. So there is this freshwater biome. And then we have tundra, where it's an cold desert, generally in Arctic and alpine region. So this is something which you need to remember. If exact values you can't remember, then just see the range or something. Like when it's tropical rainforest, what's an average temperature, what's the rainfall, and NPP, that is net primary productivity. So if you don't know the concept of NPP, you can refer to my previous slide. There I have explained what is NPP and what is GPP and how it affects the overall efficiency of an ecosystem. You can also see that how the biodiversity is higher in tropical rainforest because of the temperature and rainfall. But there is this limiting factor also. Limiting factor is something where it is important, but it is something which is not present. So light competition, because the trees are huge and there are many plants, many trees, and biodiversity is very higher. There is also high canopy. Now that canopy can lead to the light competition. It will not allow the light to enter and can, you know um so light can be a limiting factor in those situation. Desert temperature is this 40 to 45 to 49 degrees Celsius. Rainfall is less. NPP is very low. In tropical rainforest, it's very high. Biodiversity is again low because of the limiting factor water. Tundra, there is this very cold temperature, that is minus 30 to 10 degrees Celsius. Rainfall is again low. NPP biodiversity is again very low, and there is this permafrost. So that's the frozen soil, and there is this short growing season. Then we have the temperate forest where the seasonal temperature is there, like there is this hot summer and cold winter, but NPP and biodiversity is moderate, so the rainfall is also average, moderate, and there is this seasonal temperature variation. So you may be asked to explain the distribution, structure, and productivity and biodiversity of at least four contrasting bio. Now just make sure that when they are asking about contrasting, that means you can't take a two biome with similar conditions. Okay, just try to pick the biomes which has an opposite characteristic. Like you can take tropical rainforest and uh, desert, or you can take, you know tundra and temperate forest. So just try to pick, you know extremes one first, then you can go with the another one. Now this is again a concept of tricellular model of atmospheric circulation, where it explains that how the uh, behavior of atmospheric system and distribution of precipitation and temperature is different at different latitude. It also explains how these factors influences the structure and relative productivity of different terrestrial biome. So like here it is, you can see that there is this three different types of cells they have mentioned, that is Hartley cell, feral cell, and polar cell, which is on the top side. So what is exactly happening here? So we know that there is this maximum temperature, or you can say the sunlight is directly reaching at the equatorial region in a higher amount. Okay, so uh, if you see, then we know that the there is this warmer air which is present at the equatorial region. Okay, and there is this higher rainfall also. Now why it is like that? Okay, so it's because of that, because warmer air rises at the equator and there is this low pressure. So this warmer air will try to move on in this direction. So can you see this arrow? So this is all the warmer air which is traveling upside. Now when it is traveling upside, okay, it is going towards the polar cell, right? So that's why this warmer air meet, and in further when it rises, it combines and it forms the colder air. Now this colder air will then settle down. Okay, because you know that the cold air sinks, warmer air rises. So that's why, because of this condition, there is this thick cloud formation which you can see, which is happening. And this thick cloud is something which is responsible for very high rainfall in this region. So this northeast trade wind will again settle down again, they meet to the equatorial region, and this is how the cycle repeats continuously, and that's why this is known as Hartley cell. So same thing is happening in the another side also. So there is this Hartley cell which is happening. In polar region, something different happening. In polar cell, we know that there is this colder waves which is present, right? So it is cold and there is this dense air. So it will try to move towards the equatorial region. So if you see this, this is the polar cell which they are showing. So it will try to move towards the equatorial region, and if it is moving towards, it gets little bit warmer. And we know that the warmer air will again settle down, colder will rise. Again, it will move in the opposite direction. So if it is moving towards the polar, it becomes colder. If it is traveling towards the equatorial, it will get warmer. So cold, dense air descends at poles and it flows equatorward and it rises at 60 degrees Celsius. So it's a there because of these conditions, there is this cold, dry polar deserts in this subpolar low region, and in between them there is this feral cell which is happening where the there is this indirect circulation which is driven by the Hartley and polar cell together, and that results into the moderate temperature, moderate precipitation, and that's how the different type of biome you will see in the feral cell. So generally in the equatorial region you will see, in this site you will see tropical rainforest, here you will see desert. So what is intertropical convergence zone? So it's a meeting point where the two different types of trade winds, that is north east trade winds and the another, we can say, south east uh, trade winds will meet. So and it always meets at the equator, and air is heated, it becomes less dense and it rises by convection, it forms a cumulonimbus cloud, which I've said that leads to heavy rainfall. Now ocean absorbs solar radiation and ocean currents distribute the resulting heat around the world. So generally there are two types of currents. First is surface current. So before that we need to see understand that oceans absorbs around 90% of the solar radiation which are reaching to the earth's surface, okay? And water has a high heat capacity, it stores large amount of heat. So it is responsible for the current and for the biome distribution also. So there are two types of current. First is surface current, which is being driven by the wind. So up to, in ocean, like they are talking about ocean, so in up to 400 meter, the surface currents is driven by wind, and it move warm equatorial water towards pole. And there is this deep current which is after 400-meter depth. So that is something which is run by the density difference, so how much salt concentration is there. So depending upon the density, it is you know difference is there. So cold water towards equator complete the global conveyor belt. So warm surfaces, polar region, it when it becomes cooler it becomes dense, it sinks to the deep ocean. Again when it gets warmer it rises upwell. So this kind of things are continuously happening, okay? So these are the key currents. Like first is Gulf Stream, which carries warm water from Gulf of Mexico to Europe, and that will keep the UK and Scandinavia region 5 to 10 degrees Celsius warmer than the equivalent latitude, and that supports the temperate forest instead of tundra. California current, cold current along western North America, cooler coastal climate, supports the coastal scrub and fog dependent ecosystem. And then we have this another current which is Peru current, which is a cold upwelling current. Now what is this upwelling and downwelling? So upwelling is when the so this movement of water continuously happening, right? So when the uh, bottom water, so when the water present in the lower region of the ocean travels upward. So along with that water, it will also bring nutrient rich condition, nutrient rich things. Okay, that nutrient rich water, because all that uh, you know remnants of plants or aquatic plants, or when the zooplanktons, phytoplanktons gets die, they settle at the ocean bottom and they are nutrient rich, right? So during upwelling, that all nutrient rich water, you know, comes upper side, and that will bring a massive productivity. So that will help the organisms which are present in the upper region, especially phytoplanktons. So now, because of this conditions, okay, sometimes because of human intervention, this there is this disruption which is happening, like when temperature. We know that temperature is rising everywhere, okay, and because of that, the region which was colder once upon a time, now they are becoming hotter. Now because of that, the species which were living there, they won't be able to survive in that region, and that's why they will try to move upward region or poleward side, and that results into a biome shift. So earlier, where the biome, so if you see the original map of, like, if you see few years back where actually the biome was situated, it was not exactly where it is present today. Why? Because the biome shift is actually happening. And if sometimes the biodiversity is not able to survive those conditions, then they will try to move, they will try to find the better place, right? Similarly, for plants also, for trees also, they will not be able to survive those conditions, and that's why they will try to survive and find a better place. So this then real life examples which you can see. Sahel region, which was earlier a woodland, that had converted into a savanna due to reduced rainfall and rising temperature. Boreal forest is another example. Um Model project, Midwestern prairie climate migrating into the current boreal zone. So that is happening. So forest boreal northward into tundra is happening. Shrubs, trees advancing northward as permafrost thaws, tundra biome shrinking, mountain is getting compressed. So what are the impact of biome shift? So biodiversity loss, that's a very common thing. Species won't be able to migrate fast, then they will face extinction. There is this drought stress which decreases the productivity. There is this lesser net primary productivity, so we won't be able to transfer those nutrients to the higher trophic level, and because of that, the food web will disrupt. Okay. So there's this exam tip: organism move toward pole, higher up mountain, or toward the equator where conditions are wetter. Barriers, urban areas, agriculture, oceans prevent migration, causing local extinction. So that's how not all organism is able to survive those conditions. These are the general climate pattern. You can remember this. This is also known as Köppen climate classification, which divides climate into five groups based on rainfall and temperature. So, in previous slide also we have studied that temperate is higher. Temperate is moderate, tropical is higher, and polar is extremely colder. These are the examples. So in exam, you may ask to compare two any two compare or contrast any two biome. Then you should be able to understand, or should be able to write the characteristics of different biomes. These are the secondary influences and human intervention, that how it affects. So we know that urbanization and agriculture and deforestation, that basically, like, if you discuss in detail, we know that urbanization replaces the natural habitat with impermeable surfaces. Okay, and because of that, the water is not able to absorb, and that is something leading to flood, and there is this habitat fragmentation, and it disrupts the water and nutrient cycle. So if you are replacing tropical forest land into city, biome replaced regardless of climate prediction, right? Agriculture, where we are actually, um, doing a monoculture. So because of that, the different types of nutrients which should be there in the and different recycling of nutrients which should be there, that gets disrupted, and this will uh, affect the nutrient level of the soil. Similarly, deforestation, if you remove tree cover and if you expose soil, then it will reduce the carbon fixation, because we know that most of the carbon is fixed by the trees also, right? So that also affect the precipitation pattern, and it will increase the erosion also. So question in one of the past paper is that why a biome in a specific location differs from what temperature or rainfall would predict, and where you have to identify by the human intervention and explaining its mechanism. So there you need to go into little bit detail that how an urbanization as a factor can impact the mechanism. So sometimes when question asks, students just write the factor but they don't go into little bit detail. Now this is an HL part, right? So students are expected to write the mechanism and write the impact which that factor is going to cause. Okay, that much is required when you are writing an HL response. So just make sure that uh, you are explaining the actual concept. Now, ENSO cycle is the El Nino Southern Oscillation Cycle, which is a fluctuation in wind and sea surface temperature that characterizes conditions in the tropical Pacific Ocean. So, El Nino and La Nina is both a Spanish words, and El Nino means it's a warmer temperature, and La Nino is colder. And these are basically the ocean currents and it how it impact the biomes in a different condition. So when this El Nino gets, you must have heard this word in news nowadays that the El Nino is getting weakened and La Nina is getting strengthened. Then because El Nino reduces the upwelling and La Nina is enhancing upwelling, so how that results into flooding in different region and drought condition in different region. So that's how it affects. This is a Walker circulation and upwelling. So El Nino is due to the weakening or reversal of the um, circulation. So that you need to understand that how increase stratification and decreasing the upwelling. So earlier only I have told you that upwelling is when the nutrient rich water is traveling upside, and it will enrich the organisms which are present on the top topper or the upper region of the ocean. Now if that is not happening, that will decrease the upwelling. Okay, so no, in normal conditions what is happening, so trade winds will blow west, warm water piles up in the western Pacific, and the upwelling of Peru will happen, and this will allow the cool nutrient rich water to get into upward direction, and that will increase the marine productivity. But in El Nino, what is happening? This gets weakened, right? So, warm water shifts eastward, and that will result into the reduced upwelling and stratification, and this results into a nutrient poor surface, and the fishery will get collapse because phytoplanktons are the main producers, right? If phytoplanktons are not there, the further trophic level organism will get affected. And during La Nina, the trade winds get strengthened, the enhanced warm water push west side, and enhanced upwelling will happen. So that will boost the fisheries. So this is about the real case study of Peru, where The El Nino has happened one year, 1997 to 1998, and that has collapsed the Peruvian anchovy fishery, and that was resulted into a severe flooding and landslides where billions were damaged. And that's why the tropical cyclones, you know, happen, because that is also something which are rapidly rising because of these El Nino and La Nina events. So what is cyclone? They are rapidly circulating storm system with low pressure center that originate in the tropics, which are characterized by strong wind, and they are formed over warm ocean water. And what are the features? So they have a center, they are surrounded by eye wall, which is mostly dense in wind and rain, and it has a spiral rain band, and rotate counterclockwise or clockwise due to its Coriolis effect. And they are classified, so you must have heard different names of hurricanes or typhoons. So they are named depending upon their wind speed. So generally, hurricane is present in the Atlantic Ocean. Typhoons are present in Pacific region, and cyclones are generally in Indian Ocean and South Pacific region. So strong wind results into the damage, infrastructure destruction, debris formation. Heavy rainfall results into the flooding, landslides. Storm surge result into the sea water pushed into coast, and coastal flooding and erosion. So we know that Typhoon Haiyan happened in 2013 in Philippines, which was one of the strongest ever recorded sustained wind, which is around 200 and 315 kilometer per hour, and that has resulted into a 6,000 deaths. Similarly, Hurricane Katrina happened in US Gulf Coast, fueled by warm Gulf water, and resulted into billions of damage. So, rises in the ocean temperature resulting from global warming are increasing the intensity and frequency of hurricane and typhoons, because warmer water and air have more energy. Okay, so that's how, because of the higher temperature, it also results into a higher hurricane. So we have seen that category 4 5, so higher impact causing hurricanes has increased in recent decades. There is a significant rise in the storms since 1970s, and that results into the coastal damage, human displacement, ecosystem destruction, and water contamination. These are the essential vocabularies which you have to use while writing responses related to the topic, and just make sure that you are using subject specific terminologies, and that will help you to score more marks. These are the final key takeaways and exam tips. Okay, so thank you very much. In the next class, we will continue with subtopic 2.5.